Apple is one of the most recognizable companies in the world. Its market valuation is north of $1 trillion, and millions of its devices are in the hands of users from Acapulco to Zimbabwe. Today we'll tell you about a man whose hard work proved that when there's great desire, an idea can be made into reality born out of great faith in one's strengths and abilities. The protagonist of our story was born on February 24, 1955. His life didn't really work out from the very beginning. When he was little, his own mother abandoned him and gave him up for adoption. However, he wasn't there for long and soon he had a new family. He was adopted by a married couple, Paul and Clara Jobs. They couldn't have children of their own, so they made the decision to adopt someone else's child and raise them as their own. And this child known as Steve Jobs. At just 17 years old, Steve Jobs dropped out of school after only one semester, and for a year and a half, he took various courses to find out what he would like to study. In 1974, he joined Atari as a video game programmer, where he first met Steve Wozniak. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were both employed at Atari in the early 1970s. Jobs had previously worked there as a technician, and Wozniak was hired to design hardware for Atari's arcade games. They shared a passion for electronics and computer technology. Ronald Wayne was also at Atari. He was an electrical engineer and had been brought in by Atari's co-founder. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak met Ronald Wayne through their involvement with Atari, a company known for creating video games and home computer systems in the early days of the personal computer industry. After their time at Atari, Jobs and Wozniak went on to form Apple Computer in 1976, and they approached Ronald Wayne to join them as a partner. Wayne agreed to become a co-founder of Apple, and he even drew the company's first logo and wrote the manual for the Apple I computer. Years passes by. Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak and Ronald Wayne founded Apple in April 1, 1976. The trio started the company in Jobs' family garage with the aim of developing and selling personal computers. Their first product was the Apple I, a computer kit that included a motherboard, CPU and RAM. However, Ronald Wayne's involvement with Apple was short-lived. He had concerns about the potential financial risks associated with the company, and fearing potential debts, he decided to sell his 10% stake in Apple for $800 just 12 days after becoming a co-founder. So, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's meeting with Ronald Wayne occurred while they were working together at Atari and eventually led to Wayne's brief involvement with the early days of Apple Computer. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak are often credited as the primary founders and driving forces behind the company. Wozniak was the man behind Apple's first device, the Apple I, building the first version by hand using a wooden casing. It was far from the kind of computers we know and use today. The company's early success was driven by the release of the Apple II in 1977, which was the first personal computer to include color graphics. Apple II was very successful, so Apple III was not long in coming. It was launched in 1980, in collaboration with IBM. With each passing day, the founders of Apple became millionaires. Steve Jobs became increasingly convinced that the future belonged to computer-friendly graphical user interfaces. So, in 1983, he launched the Apple Lisa, the first personal computer with a graphical interface. Subsequently, its commercialization proved to be a failure due to the high price and the limited number of applications. Still, it was the first consumer computer to come at the mouse and, more importantly, a GUI. Steve Wozniak also left Apple in 1983, so, in 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh 128K, which was successful. It was the first mass-market consumer price computer and used a GUI and mouse-like to Lisa. At $2,495, the Macintosh still wasn't cheap, but it was far from the $10,000 Lisa. But then dropped dramatically due to the high price, low speed and software limitations. Neither Jobs nor Wozniak were Apple's CEO when the company started. Its first CEO was Michael Scott, who came over from National Semiconductor in 1977. Mike Markkula, an early investor and Apple's third employee, took over from Scott in 1981 and headed the company until 1983. It was in 1983 that Jobs famously pitched then Pepsi CEO John Sculley to be Apple's next CEO. John Sculley and Steve Jobs initially hit it off, but their relationship soon soured. In 1985, Jobs planned to oust Sculley as the head of Apple in a coup. The move, however, backfired, and Apple's board ended up moving Jobs into the role of chairman, which was far from the hands-on position. Steve left the company in 1985 and founded NeXT with some of his employees. Jobs launched here the Next Step operating system, which was later bought by Apple for $430 million. At the time, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy, when Steve Jobs returned to lead the company as CEO in 1997. Since then, the company's fate has changed. They began development for new products, and in 1998 launched the iMac, which was sold in over 800,000 units in the first 5 months. In 2001, the first Apple stores were opened in Virginia and California. Mac OS X was launched. The portable product iPod was introduced on the market, and in 2003 they launched the first digital platform to sell music, iTunes, which is fast becoming the market leader. In 2007, Apple made the most profitable launch in its history, the iPhone, Apple's first touchscreen phone. Given the success of the iPhone, Apple launched in 2010 the iPad, the first tablet that could replace a computer. Unfortunately, Steve Jobs diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2003, and he died in 2011. And the company was taken over by Tim Cook, who had already held executive positions since 2009. Even though many believed that Steve Jobs' death would mean the end of Apple, Tim Cook has proven that Apple can thrive financially and bring completely new and revolutionary products to market. In 2011, he launched the Siri virtual assistant, and in 2015 he launched the Apple Watch. Right now, Apple is among the most valuable companies in the world. The company's net value at the end of 2020 was $65.34 billion, and its market capitalization is $2.08 trillion as of March 15, 2021. Apple Computer, later known as Apple Inc., went on to become one of the most successful and influential technology companies in the world. Throughout its history, Apple has been known for its design aesthetics, focus on user experience, and a strong ecosystem of hardware and software. The company's innovations have had a significant impact on the technology industry and have garnered a dedicated global fan base. And that's the wrap of our story for today. Thank you for joining us on this illuminating journey through the life and legacy of Steve Jobs. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like, share and subscribe to our channel, and please turn on the notification bell so you won't miss in our every uploads. There's lots of new content on the way, but until then, thank you so much for watching. You are a legend. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.